Hello, 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 and welcome to the Lion's Den. My name is Alonzo Chapman, and I will be your moderator, host, funny guy to come and have a conversation with tonight. We have a very special episode of the Lion Den here for Black History Month. We are looking at a topic. We want to examine the legacy. And when we talk about the legacy, we want to look at it from multiple different levels. We want to look at our own personal legacy. We want to look at our family legacy. And we want to look at how we contribute to the culture. We want to take this thing from grassroots and see if we can move it on up. But we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We got some credits that we're going to roll. So I'm going to step aside for 1 second. When we get back, we're going to jump right into it, okay? And we are back. We are back. We are back. So we're going to get started today. I have two insanely intelligent, interesting, just great guys to talk to tonight. If you could welcome Mr. Antoine and Mr. James to come and have this conversation with me. How you doing tonight, fellas?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, sir. How about you, man?
I cannot complain. I cannot complain. Just before we get into it, let me not be rude. I was raised with a mama that gave me good manners. How you fellas doing today? Everything good on your end?
Doing well, doing well.
All right, I
Doing
see you.
okay. Doing okay.
Okay. Well, now that we got all that knocked out, let's go ahead and jump into this topic tonight because legacy, I believe, is very important. We hear the word legacy thrown around a lot. We hear people constantly talking about the culture. We hear all of these different terms thrown around, but it's not too often that we actually see people sit down and they define what legacy is, what it means to them, how it applies to them. So for me personally, when I think about legacy, I'm thinking about what am I building that will live past me? What am I building that will manifest itself throughout time after I'm far long left this earth, left I've finished, completed my work as it may be. I'm thinking about what are the butterfly effects that I can create even with my small actions to affect others on a wider stage. When I'm thinking legacy, those are the things that I'm thinking about. I want to open it up to you fellas and hopefully let's see if we can get started with James. James, can you tell me what do you think about when you think about your personal legacy?
Personal legacy. I would definitely say number one is keeping my character clean.
Okay.
So, in the midst of keeping my character clean, that means that I have to cross I have to cross every T, dot every I. That means that I have to be the example that I want those that's following me to be. So, if it's hard work, if it's stick to itiveness, if it's persistence, uh, all those things, um, all those things definitely are a ladder to our legacy, even when we're gone, because our last name is a brand.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Andre, you want to jump in? Define legacy for me.
First of all, thank you for having me, man. And to James, good evening, good afternoon to you, James. One of the things that I've been thinking about is, and I wrote it down here. So let me just go by the script that I wrote down so I won't go by
Don't
off
follow
of
the script.
it. Belief systems. Belief systems in the sense of um, what do I want the children, my children that are coming behind me, and if they decide to have children, what do they believe about basic fundamentals? And I'm not talking about far as culture as much as I'm talking about how what we believe about family as a whole, how we treat people, showing love, because my belief systems are constantly being fine tuned. So, like I said, I don't want to relegate it to just belief systems, but just the basic principles about showing love, um, upholding our name in regards to morale, character, behavior, history. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say in regards to legacy. How, not only how I want to be remembered, but how I want to be known. How I will be remembered after my time is completed on earth, but also how I want to be known in regards to my time presently. So that's how I'm looking and trying to fine tune legacy, because legacy can almost be eerie in some people's minds, because they're like, well, are you trying to say I'm about to leave here? So I don't want to look in that regard. I want to look at the reality of, after I am completed my journey here on earth, but also what do I do to deposit influence now?
Okay. Honestly, I thoroughly enjoy both of you guys' reaction in definition, because I honestly believe that's where we should start, because it has to come from a personal level. It has to start with your character. It has to come from your behavior. It has to come from your consistency in delivering both your character and your behavior, because that is very key.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
one of the things that got me thinking about this particular topic, you guys both know that I am an educator. I teach music at the high school level. And as we begin to make our way into the African American History Month, randomly I just decided to throw on Lift Every Voice and Sing. Now, for
Yes, sir.
me, when I was growing up, and I was a mid 90s baby, like I was born in the 80s, I cut my teeth in the 90s playing in the streets in East Baltimore. So every school I went to, every assembly we had Lift Every Voice and Sing. And it was a pride thing for me, where so before I ever knew the story, I understood that part of my identity was kind of linked to that song, because everyone continued to bring that back to me. But as I went in to start and educate my students and play, just to see where their knowledge level is, because before I start chapters, I like to poke and prod to see where you are. I don't like to overhash things, because that's how you lose teenagers. So as I go to see where their levels are, I was exposed that they had no experience with this. So it made me start to think about, what is this legacy that I have and what is being passed down? Because as we talk about this consistency and this character and this behavior, then we have to, it brings us to the question that James started to hint at. How are we going to begin to translate this honor code or belief system, if you would, that is going to build our legacy, and that's going to be this culture of influence that starts in our very home? How do we start to bring that to our children? How do we make that important to them? Anybody jump in, help me out.
Uh,
I'm throwing it out there.
yeah. You
James,
know
talk to
what?
me.
Yeah. You know what? And one thing I was also thinking about, I heard this. It's a quote. It said, "Character versus reputation." It says, "Character is who you are, while reputation is who people think you are."
Yes, sir.
So, so always our character, and like I said, our character and keeping it clean, it's really who we are. That means nobody's looking. That means when all the lights are off. That means when you have gone behind the veil and you are one on, or you know what I'm saying, and you are with your family. So that, what I'm saying, so your character is definitely going to speak volumes into, like, what I'm saying, into our younger ones that live on and carry our name because of how we carried it. And the thing about it is that they will carry it with pride, because they know, hey, you know what? This is what dad would have wanted. This is how dad did things. And now, not to say that they can't find a better way, but I've created the baseline for them to operate. And and once you build anything on good ground, it's definitely going to come up.
Andre.
I agree. I agree. Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
No, go. You jump in, and then I'm gonna ask you a question after I get your comment.
So if you see me looking down, I'm actually writing notes as you're talking, and James had me. He said something about a baseline, which caused me to start writing. That foundation, I think foundations are definitely important. How a foundation is laid determines what can be placed on it, What's placed on it determines how it can stand. How it's
Mhm.
laid determines what's going to be placed on it. How it, what we place on it determines how it can stand. And I think one of the things for me is really jumping in my head. And I wish James would have kept talking a little bit more because he was giving me some stuff to write. Um, Behavior patterns. He quoted something in regards to how we're known, and I think as it relates to a legacy, that behavioral pattern, and it stated initially as it relates to my belief systems. A lot of my belief systems are being fine tuned. A lot of them are being tweaked, but one thing is a constant, and that is a behavioral pattern as it relates to our name. Now, um,
Mhm.
my bloodline has a certain behavioral pattern as it relates to its legacy. Some things I am trying to uphold as it relates to strength and courage, but then there are other things I'm trying to fine tune to begin with me, to start with me, so that when my children look at my bloodline, they'll see me not so much what preceded me. They'll start with me. And
Mhm.
I agree with
Mhm.
James when he said something about a baseline. It's funny we're having this conversation because I'm still young. I'm like you, Alonzo, 80s baby. Experiences started really developing beyond the 80s and the 90s. And I sat back, quite honestly, the last 2 weeks thinking about legacy. The more I look at, I can't even say, well, they're my children, but they're my teenagers now. And then I'm
Mhm.
looking at my life and I'm saying, okay, what are certain things that I want instituted? What are certain things as it relates to me in comparison to my bloodline do I want abolished to start with me? Because a lot is like, no, I don't want to keep going down that same path, creating
Yes.
those same cycles. So I'm gonna stop there.
Yes.
You were gonna say something. You really had me going. Thank you, James.
No, no, you good. Because honestly, here's the thing, and that's what's always great about these conversations. Because once we get flowing, then everything starts to click together. Because the
Yes, sir.
next step is really is while we're developing our own personal legacy and we're passing it on, we often find ourselves at a place of pruning or manicuring the
Mhm.
long-standing legacy that passes past you. So the question becomes, how do we do that? Because when we think about things like, I know I had an idea of what my family legacy was. And then I know the older I got and the more conversations I had with people, and the more you talk to that uncle that nobody talks to no more, and that cousin that don't nobody speak to, and you start to see that the ideal or this pedestal of the legacy that you were given is not quite as high as it used to be. And that's not to take away from any of the great work that they do, because we're all human. Everybody's going to make mistakes. All have sinned and fallen short. So when it comes down to it, everybody's going to make their mistakes. But how do we tackle that management of your historical legacy just within your own personal family as you hand it down to your children?
I think for me, it takes having an awareness of what's there.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
you go to the, I'm in the medical field. I worked in the medical field for, I guess, the last 16, 17 years. Um, so one of the things as it relates to family history, and I am learning and having to start having an awareness of the older I get. Mr. Wilson, does such and such run in your family? There's a lot of questions when I'm doing a questionnaire I cannot answer because I am not aware of what's there. Ignorance is just as dangerous as knowledge, um, because of having certain stacks up against you or brought up against you rather, because you don't know. However, you Alonzo, you said something, and the thought came to my mind: learned behavior. there's so many behavioral traits that have been learned.
Mm-hmm.
And if you come from a generation where you never ask questions, you're just taking on what's been presented. So you said something about pruning, and everybody knows that when we look at family, we consider the family tree. So one of the things that I'm really starting to do, along with my awareness, is to prune my tree, because there's certain fruit I don't want to remain on a tree that is continuing with me, and is now not only continuing with me, but also it's a continuation with my children and with their children. So for me, I'll say awareness. We can't sweep some things under the rug, and I don't want to jump ahead because I know how our conversations flow, and Alonzo, I know how as a moderator you've thought out some things way ahead. You're visionary, so, and you create as you go. So I don't want to deal with that
Talk your talk,
without
brother.
too
Talk
much.
your talk.
But we can't sweep some things under the rug that granddaddy was such and such. Granddaddy was his behavior wasn't the best when it came to his attitude or his anger. We can't eliminate the reality that Aunt so and so. Let me do that because I don't want some names to say. And I was like, well, I really do have an aunt. So Aunt so and so was, she couldn't keep a man because Aunt so and so just her mouth, and then Aunt so and so's daughter's mouth. So I think it takes really sitting down to look at what's there and to see the patterns, to be aware of the patterns. And then when it comes to where we are, especially as men, to have that responsibility, let me start cutting away some things. Again, because a lot of things are learned behavior. We do things because they did things, and they did things because they did things. Case in point, young lady in the kitchen with her grandmother asking, why are we making this dish this certain way? Why are we making this dish a certain way? Grandmother said, well, we were always taught. That wasn't an explanation. That was just saying we were always taught. There was another relative that was in the house. I was told that it was the grandmother's mother. Went to the grandmother's mother and asked the grandmother's mother, why are we making this dish this way? We have a pot. We cut part of the dish away, part of the meat away, and throw the other half away. And the great grandmother was there, and she said, well, the reason why we did it that way was because the pot wasn't big enough. Now, here we go, this long cycle of cutting one portion away, putting it in the pot, and throwing it away. The idea should have been, instead of throwing it away, to package it and reserve it. But you were completely eliminating something that could have been held on to. So it is with us. I think when it looks at our situation, we do things because it's learned behavior. I've never put my hands on my daughter to beat her. Spare the word to spoil the child. Spare the rod to spoil the child. I got it. But for me, I didn't want to create a pattern where my daughter thinks, and I'm not saying to anybody that watched this, that if you discipline your daughter, I'm not saying that. But for me, I don't want my daughter to think that it's okay for a man to put his hands on her. So for me, I've never disciplined spanking my daughter. Now, the disciplinarian as it related to my daughter is my wife. But even with my wife, my daughter really never had to be spanked. I don't want to use the word beat, but spanked, because we just took Dora the Explorer away. We took, these other things. But it's just those type of scenarios for me that I'm really learning and having an awareness of certain defects within me. And I'm trying to prune away. Never mind what has been generationally passed down. Just looking at my own life, I'm like, wow, yeah, let me start cutting this away. Let me start cutting this away, because I see certain traits in my children that they've already, been deputized to receive, and they didn't do anything. It's just a little me, a little bit of them, and it's in them. And it's like, how do we cut it away?
What's really interesting that you brought up, and I think it's always been amazing to me because oftentimes we get caught in a cycle of this is what we've been taught, but oftentimes we forget the reason that we were taught that. The
Yes, sir.
reason the lesson originated. With the example you gave, see, if we're talking about great 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 grandma throwing half the meat away, we got to remember great grandma didn't have no refrigerator to store it. Great grandma didn't have no freezer bags, nor another
No other
pot or
thing.
enough wood to cook it. So it
Right.
was
Yes, sir.
get the most that we can at that time and do the best with
Away.
what we can with what we got. But
Yes,
that's oftentimes lost. And honestly, in his thing, I'll speak for me
yes, sir.
because I grew up in a highly religious family. So there were rules that were put in place 50 years ago that 50 years ago it made sense. I'm going to throw an arbitrary one out there. Everybody in my family going to laugh. It's all right. You can judge me. You know who I am. When I was growing up, you couldn't go to a bowling alley. I could not figure out for the life of me why I couldn't go to a bowling alley as a church boy. And then when it was finally explained to me, it was explained that gangs hang out in the back of bowling alleys and we need to stay away for safety.
Wow.
A gang ain't hung out in the back of a bowling alley since 1962. What is this rule still in place for? But every time
Right.
you would address the rule, and like I almost did a backflip when Andre said it, the response was always, well, we've been taught. Well, why
Mm-hmm.
were we
Yes, sir.
taught that? What's the purpose? What are we trying to achieve? What's happening there? James, can you speak a little bit to that about us? Like, do we
Oh,
really
definitely.
are we looking for those root causes out there?
You know what? A lot of things that as far as like even gardening, you know what I'm saying? So as far as like your tree, if your tree gets too big, you have to trim the bare roots. So you know what I'm saying? So the roots that's actually exposed, which means they're coming up out of the ground, everything, you got to trim those. But you know what? A lot of things we learn is more lines. It's not legacy or tradition, it's indoctrination. So what ends up
Yes, sir.
happening is that we will sit up here and we will continue foolishness because generations have passed it down, passed it down, passed it down. It's like take for instance, like, look, man, look, my family is when I'm the first Marine, I'm the first. I'm the first police officer. I'm the first. I mean, like, look, the lineage was gangster. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, look, granddaddy was investigated. My great grandfather was investigated by the FBI and everything. I mean, like, look. I mean, like, look. It was it was going down in Kentucky. So you know what I'm saying? So, you know, so it's like, but also even in the indoctrination, what we also got is deception because even our forefathers and our mothers, the matriarchs and the patriarchs, they withheld a lot of information in hopes that it don't get on you. So it's a thing that you don't give me the actual choice to what's it called. I'm sitting up here wondering why things are going this way, and you're withholding information. It was always a thing that they never told what was going on. It's just like you say, the health screening. It was just like, I can't answer none of these. I mean, like it wasn't until I got older till I got to ask, like, hey, do we have any of this going on in our family? Do we have this? Do we have this? Because come to find out that everybody in our family, everybody had these little digits that was what's called, and it was generations. It was just like, I didn't get them. My sons got them. My daughter got them. My sister got them. My brother got them. It jumped over me. So my thing about it was that I was like, well, dang, how come me, am I special or whatever like that? Well, I ain't getting them, or whatever. But but it's always that thing that we don't like, what I'm saying, we never know because they withhold those parts from us. And the thing about it is that we have to know what's going on so we know what we're going against. And so now we can make rules and make regulations as far as like, look, I just don't want you guys to do this. I want you to think before you go do this. Not just the installation of fear, because that was also something else that what I'm saying, that the older generation did. It was just the installation of fear in everything because they were really frightened to go do things. They'll put the fear in you as far as not to go do it, and come to find out that fear is not even there.
You know, when you speak about that, it brings up. I was actually looking at a podcast, and they had a couple of people speaking on the podcast, and they were talking about how PTSD is generational and hereditary. And what we have seen, and this will kind of start to move our conversation along. What we have seen is within our culture, within the Black community, there is a certain level of PTSD that is hereditary. One of the gentlemen on the panel was speaking about how he was riding in the car with his daughter. His daughter's 6. And the cops pulled up and she said, "Ooh, daddy, the police behind me." And it kind of shook him that she already had, with no negative interactions with the police, she already had that shell shock and that fear in her. So it takes us into, because as we look at it and we start to address it culturally, how much fear do we instill because it's needed, and how much do we want them to just be normal? Because I mean, we would all love for the next generation to just be normal kids. We would love for them to have awkwardness and be able to act like their counterparts from every other cultural group. But as Black men, we know that's not really plausible. So how much of this fear versus freedom are we passing on to our next generation? Because as we have seen, a lot was not passed on to us. While we got a lot of fear, we didn't get a lot of information. How much fear are we giving versus information? And I'm gonna leave it open. Whoever wants to jump
All
in.
right, all right, I'll jump in. All right, so I really think that, see, and you know what, and even to put something to add on to that is that we'll teach them things to be angry about, but not teach them how to have conflict resolution in order to resolve the situation peacefully. So even in our interactions with the police, I've said up here, I've told my sons, I'm looking like, look, first and foremost, when they approach you, if you know what I'm saying, if they approach you, if they tend to be hostile, put your hands right here. I was just like, because guess what? The calmer you are, the more safe that they feel. And I was just like, now, and I was just like, now, it's not necessarily a fear of you. It's more in lines that you making them feel comfortable to come up out of whatever it is that they're on. If they're on 10, you need to dial them back to 5. You know what I'm saying? Don't sit up there, because we all know, police, man, what you talking about? What you coming up on me for? For what? For what? And guess what? And the thing about it is like, well, sir, you actually just dropped your wallet. So we have a lot of anger, hostility, and lack of resolve because of the things that we've been taught. And you know what I'm saying? And the things that have been taught, and you know what? Presentation. So you know what I'm saying? It's presented as this, but it doesn't give any in-depthness. It doesn't give what it could be. It give, oh, it's always going to be this. Don't trust this. This is going to happen. You know, if you, I'm like, well, dang on. I mean, like, do I have a choice in the matter? I mean, like, is there anything that I could talk to? It's like, say, for instance, back in the day, you used to hear older Black people talking about some demand. I'm looking like, well, demand. I'm looking like, so that means he breathes air and bleed like we do, right? So that means we can talk to him, correct? Oh, no, no, you don't talk to the man. I'm like, well, if he's a man, we should be able to talk to him. What do you, like,
Like
who's this
undercover
man?
brother, the man.
Yeah, the man, exactly. So I'm looking like, why can't we talk to him? I mean, like, if he's a man, like you say he is, let's have some dialogue. I mean, what is it that we're really scared of? But like I said, it's always the presentation. It's the presentation of fear, and never ever but also the presentation of fear. But we will sing the songs. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. But the whole time, fear, 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 fear. Even though that word is there, no, fear, 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 fear. I'm like, wow, it's definitely a lot of conflict in our culture.
Absolutely. Andre, did you want to add something?
I think that we have to stop painting a picture that authority is a threat.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that that picture, the canvas has to start at home. A lot of times we're trying to paint a picture, and the picture should have started, the painting rather, the canvas for the painting should have started at home. And again,
Mm-hmm.
when case in point, you're talking about, "Oop, daddy, the police behind us." it makes me wonder that at that young age, that child is already feeling threatened by the police. And it could
The
have been
world
something
outside.
simple, right? Is she threatened at home when you hear, I'm going to tell your father?
Ah.
I mean, in a real sense, it becomes a trigger. So any authority figure, to hear that name or hear that title, it make you clutch your pearls. Some folk at home grew up in a context where daddy wasn't a term of endearment. Daddy was a taskmaster when they heard daddy.
Yep.
Daddy wasn't a term of, appreciation. Daddy was a term of, oh Lord, there he go. Or a reference of there he go. And I think, right, and I think sometimes, I know you fellas, we all of age, we remember hearing, I rule with an iron fist. That might be detrimental later. I didn't say don't have authority. I didn't say don't command respect. But sometimes discipline can be overboard. It can be burdensome. It can be overbearing. Case in point, like I said about this spanking thing. Sometimes communication in regards to discipline need to be in the form of a conversation. Why walk in a room and you see me doing something and you automatically start swinging and slapping? I might not be aware of what I done wrong. That's what's wrong with these children today. Child, when I was coming up, you beat them. You beat them to a place of oppression, not submission. And so now you're raising a little slave. They're scared because master gonna get me. What? So I think, and that behavioral pattern goes throughout everywhere. And God forbid, when you run into the police, it's already, because every police officer is not a threat and every police officer is not bad. But because of that dogmatic approach at home, it already sets the tone with anybody that has a title of authority, they're a threat. And they may not be a threat, they may be a help. So I think that the canvas need to be painted at home. First, is understand authority is not a threat. Authority is to maintain order. Authority can be structure. Authority can be discipline in a healthy manner. So that I'm like James. I told my son, prime example. I said, look, because my son wear hoodies and he love hoodies. I'm like, look, don't go to get the trash can with your hoodie on. The neighborhood, it may not be all that crazy, but it's just the image. And that's the context that we live in. The hoodie is not the problem. The problem is
it's the image of the hoodie.
The image of the hoodie. So you're dealing with a Trayvon Martin who had a hoodie on, and now, so it's one of those things of, I think it starts again for me painting the canvas, and the ink must be communication. Communicate, have a conversation, and again, to give detail, the what, when's, why, and how.
I really agree with that, especially the communication piece. I know oftentimes, because all of my children I work with are what are considered to be high risk children. My children have all had their run-ins with the law, what have you. But oftentimes when they run into difficult situations, they want to blow up, like James will say, oh, why are you coming for me? And this, that, and the third. And oftentimes, like, now, with all fairness, sometimes with them, because they're a little extra, I got to meet them there. And then we can bring it back down. And as we bring it back down, then I can walk and do, oh, I didn't like the way the staff did this. Did you know there's an entire system set up for you to file a complaint? Federally, these people have to talk to you. Like, and once you start talking them through the system, they're like, oh, I never even knew that worked like that. Did you know you had this issue with this cop? You don't have to get him back. take the brother badge number down. If it's that bad, we can get a lawyer. We can pull up his badge number. That number is linked to him. Like we
Yes,
can
sir.
go
Exactly.
through the
Badge and sequence number.
processes and the steps. Like
Yep.
they
Badge and
need,
sequence number. Yep.
like there has to
Badge
be a
number.
level of education that is brought into these processes in order
Mhm.
for our development. I know one of the key things that I combat with a lot is a lot of times when I'm teaching, there is a miseducation that has been developed, whereas though a lot of our kids see this concept, and this is somewhat of a shift, but slightly still related, where we have they kind of create MLK as this one peaceful guy, but then there's this image that Malcolm was this deranged dude who's just out here busting white people in the head. And as someone who spent a considerable amount of time studying Malcolm, Malcolm was all about preparation, communication, and being prepared to stand your ground, know your rights, and function within the system in a legal manner. Like Malcolm had all his legal things down. Very rarely did any of his rallies erupt into violence. It was about
Mhm.
discipline and communication. Everyone was well trained with him. So you didn't have those issues. Malcolm would walk right up to the police and have this conversation. Let's talk about it. Now, granted, when other people like you guys were hinting to different things with cultures and perceptions, sometimes you're dealing with an authority figure who may approach you and they have a preconceived notion. But I feel like it's paramount for us as we pass on this knowledge to the next generation that we prepare them to be able to communicate well enough to even disarm the miseducated and the misinformed without being offensive and making everybody feel like an idiot. Because sometimes when we go in to educate, you make somebody feel like an idiot. You could be right about the sky being blue, but they will fight you to make sure you know it's purple.
Facts.
Now you
But you
said
know something
something.
else? Okay, go ahead.
Go
Let's
go
start
ahead,
with you,
James.
Andre. James is
Okay.
starting on that. Andre, start off.
It
Yeah. Exactly. Go
you
ahead.
just you said something about, and I'm glad you brought that point up because as a history buff, I love history. And you said something key about Malcolm. Malcolm's mindset again, and I reiterate what you said about preparedness. That's where this whole notion by any means necessary comes into play about making sure that we're able by any means to carry out certain things. I fluctuate consistently between MLK and Malcolm. It all depends on the situation, what brings out the MLK or what brings out the Malcolm in me. And I think that as we're dealing with legacy, we need to understand that I don't have to be passive. You were just talking about that with the children. Uh, Malcolm wasn't passive. Not to say MLK was, but there was some things I honestly believe that if MLK would have instituted the Malcolm philosophy, then some things probably could have been
Mhm.
um,
Avoid
resolved in a different manner. And so, I think it's necessary again to. Oh man, I'm glad you brought that up. It's necessary to make sure we know how to approach. Prime example, and I'll leave it. I'll pass it on to James. As an educator, you know the importance of not talking at these children because then they are offended because you're talking at them opposed to talking to them. And that communication piece is so necessary because if you're talking at a person, then of course, like you said, you can try to convince them that the sky is blue. But talk at me is not number one. Talking at me is not going to make me listen to you. How about that? Or pay attention to what you're saying. If anything, it's going to make me combative. So that I'm gonna leave that alone because that man, I got a whole bunch of notes. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm. This is good.
That's true. All right. So now it was just like y'all saying between the Martin and the Malcolm thing. When I was younger, I wanted to be Martin. When I became older, I realized I identified more with Malcolm. And the reason why,
Absolutely.
like you said, is preparedness, and victory loves preparation. So the thing about it is that when you actually looked at them, Malcolm would sit right in the heart, right in the face, and would tell them laws. What is this? What is that? What is this? What is that? And you couldn't refute it. But guess what? There was also indoctrination as far as with us. Any revolutionary is going to be made to seem like he's some type of madman. So the thing about it is that um, when I'm saying, if you remember, no, I don't think nobody learned about Malcolm X until they got older, because schools didn't teach anything about Malcolm X except for that he was born. That
I
was
had
it.
to
You didn't
actively go look for the
see.
brother myself.
Yeah, I mean, like
Right.
really, like
Take a look.
I mean, like really, it's like you heard the name, but it was just like, thank goodness that I had the parents that like, oh no, this is that guy, this is that. So here I am in school at 13 talking about Malcolm X, and the other black kids like, what? But like I say, it's the indoctrination that, guess what? There wasn't nothing wrong with being a strong, proud black man. The reason why they love, and you know what? See, and it's the thing. See, once again, fear. Like I say, no discredit to Martin. Martin did great things for us, but it was the thing that he took what they gave
Hmm.
him, instead of actually requiring and saying that this is mine already by birthright. I don't have to do anything special to get it. So
Hmm.
it's always that thing. Also, even with our kids, like you said, rule with an iron fist. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like an abused animal. So what happens is that you beat a dog for so long, what's either going to happen is that it's either going to run away or it's going to attack you. One of the two.
Absolutely.
So therefore, that's the real reason why what happens is that we breed, you know what I'm saying, too much discipline, you're going to breed a hard head. Too little discipline, you're going to end up, you know what I'm saying? I was just like, this person think that the world is supposed to just do whatever because my parents did it. So you definitely have to have that fine line. But it's also the thing about it that it needs to fall, you know what I'm saying? As far as it falling on receptive ears, we also got to be that example of the balance that we're trying to teach our children. I can't sit up here and be angry all the time and talk about some, you don't do this, you don't do this, don't be like me. But at the same time, you're my example. You know what I'm saying? You're the first one I laid eyes on. So guess what? You imprinted on me, whether you knew it or not. So now, you know what I'm saying? So now I got my daddy's anger. Now I got this. Now I got that. Well, you got it because it was imprinted, like you said, you know what I'm saying? It's indoctrination. We sit up here and we're visually stimulated by what goes on around us. Like you said, the canvas is not painted at home; it's what the world is painted. Now our children see what that is being painted, and then they try to match it up with what's going on at home. So
Mm.
now, you know what I'm saying? So now, no, 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 this ain't right. No, no, they say it's this. It's like I remember coming home. Hey, mom, Christopher Columbus discovered America. She was like, "How can you discover something that was never lost?"
Mm.
And I looked for a second. You know what I'm saying? And at that, I'm telling you, my mom was a deal breaker. She was, look, she kept it real all the time. Now here I am at like seven saying that she's like, how can you discover something that's never lost? When there are people here before, I'm like, they were the Indians.
People
She
ain't
was like,
really pulled up.
exactly, exactly. I was like, the Indians. She said, no, the indigenous people. She said, Indians are Asian, son. I was taught that at seven. I mean, like I said, see, so the thing about it is that now, I mean, now there were a lot of things that she hindered from me, but there was a lot of things she put in place of the hindrances that I passed on to my kids. So I appreciated that you know what I'm saying. She's like, now you will not go into this criminal element that our family is used to. You're going to walk this way. And I mean, she made sure she moved me in the opposite direction. I mean, anytime it seemed like it was what's called shift shift, shift. But she also gave me reason why she shifted. She said, let me tell you about this person and that person. Now, like I said, she, like my mom, was okay, like with kind of telling me certain things. She was the only child. My grandmother, on the other hand, she wouldn't tell nothing. She wouldn't tell nothing. And I mean, like, and you know what? And there were some things that my mom found out later that like, wait a minute, what? You never told me that. And I'm looking like, One thing we can't do is that, and you know what I'm saying, we can't hide history, because guess what? History can either, it can either tear down our legacy, or it can, or it can give those that's coming behind us the choice to say, you know what, I know this about me, and I know I'm not going down that road. So they know where things are coming from instead of being blindsided later on in life.
Can I say something real quick? Because James said something, and I'm gonna leave this alone. I will have to sit down with my children and apologize to them, and I'm gonna tell you why.
Hmm.
There are a lot of things that this is why I love our conversations, because it makes me look at my history, especially tonight,
Hmm.
today. Um, I wrote down while you were talking, James. There's a difference just off of that ruling with an iron hand. There's a difference between being rebellious and curious,
Hmm.
and a lot of things in retrospect that I witnessed my children do. It wasn't that they were fighting authority in the sense of being rebellious. I'm just going to do this anyway, and you don't tell me what to do. A lot of it came from curiosity, and the lens look a little different when you see yourself and realize I wasn't being rebellious. I was just being curious. So if I was being curious,
They're just as curious.
they're just being curious, and
Hmm.
so that really gripped me right then. And so I wrote it down to make sure that I have a conversation and apologize with my children, because with that, as a father, I am doing my very best to not just expose vulnerability, but expose error and
Hmm.
try to correct that, so that if they become parents, or they don't have to become parents, to birth parents to have children that they oversee. Clearly, Alonzo have told us that you can be an educator. You're the parent to a lot of people that don't have any parent that's active in their life. But I'm trying to make sure that I kill that cycle of because I said so. No, because I said so, I could be very wrong. And because I said so could come from an unhealthy place where they didn't know how to communicate, and
Hmm.
you're raising mutes. Um, and that be seen and not heard mentality. No, because you can be right in my presence every day and have a whole laundry list of stuff that you've gotten yourself involved in. But because I'm not approachable to communicate, because I don't expose my vulnerabilities and say, hey, as a father, I'm sorry, I messed up. I need to go fix this. And hopefully, building
Mm.
that kind of rapport, they feel free enough to come and say, Daddy, I messed up. And not feel threatened that I'm going to just jump all over their case, because it's, again, that whole notion of a lot of it wasn't rebellion, it was curiosity. And so, yeah, I just wanted to get that out, because, yeah,
I
I
about to
really
say
did.
one more thing.
Go
Like, I
ahead.
about to say one more thing, even with that one. You know what? The generation before us, they wasn't taught about apologizing for when they were wrong.
Yes, sir.
It's
Ego.
always
Yes.
that thing. It was
Ego.
that
That's
thing.
right.
I said it. I meant it, even though it didn't work out. Even though it wasn't right. No, I said what I said. No, 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 no. Because you know what? I've learned that. And you know, even with my mom, she had said something to me later in life where she was just like, you know what? I have to apologize to you. She said there were things that you saw that you shouldn't have been exposed to. I apologize for putting you in those situations, because there were things that you know what I'm saying, there were things you could have done. There were ways you could have taken your education higher, but instead I was worried about me and not really worried about you. I so apologize for that. It felt like the world lifted off my
Yep.
shoulders when she said that. So it
Yes.
was the thing that I practice that now with, even with my sons. You know what I'm saying? Like I say, it goes beyond just telling them you love them every day, but you'd be surprised how much, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I jumped the gun on this. I apologize. You know what I'm saying? I genuinely apologize, and I'm sorry if it made you feel some type of way. And you know,
Mhm.
hey, you know what? You know what I'm saying? I'm hoping you can accept my apology for me acting irrational. Not just
And,
talking about if you want something to eat after they done what's called after they were wrong, done beat you in their wrongness and house. You hungry? No, that's not an apology, man.
That's right.
Sir, that's not an apology. You slip a couple of dollars up under my door. That's not an apology. No, that's not an apology. But guess what though? Those things breed those type of behaviors. And you know what I'm saying? And then next thing you know, like you said, behavioral patterns. You know what I'm saying? There you go. It sits up there and you know, and bottom line, oh my God, it pretty much makes you a sociopath because you can't socialize. So now what you do is you put
Yeah,
these things in place of your actual social structure. Like, wow, really? It's crazy.
absolutely.
And then you can't find a partner, and you walk around talking about how everybody crazy out there, but you never learn to communicate.
I say, no, you're the crazy one, sir. Everybody can't be crazy. It's got to be you, ma'am. It's got to be you.
It helps
But
breed hostility.
say that again.
I said it helps breed hostility.
It definitely
Absolutely.
does.
That
Bitterness,
that kind of
bitterness,
behavior
everything.
breeds
Yes,
hostility. And for me, you hear a lot of adults say, "I'm not gonna have no children disrespecting me." But my question is, how many times have you disrespected the children?
they
Can I
don't
put
look at
one
it as
on there for you?
disrespect.
Are you presenting yourself in a respectful way?
And
There it
yes,
is.
sir.
There it
Because
is.
How
you
about
out
There,
here cussing, fussing, and acting like every fool in the street. But
he's
that
talking about
child got to be the respectful,
talking about some
golden
respect me,
line in the
respect,
sky while you act a
respect me.
fool. Like, make it make sense.
yes,
Oh,
sir.
we've actually sat up there and been caught up by the parents or the older people talking about, so you need to respect your elders. Oh, let me tell you. I sat up there and I got into it one time. I think I was 15. And I had said, oh my God, I'm sitting up there looking at this person and everything like that. And he actually knew my stepfather at the time. He's like, well, you need to respect your elders before I tell your father. And you know what I'm saying? You like, you know what I'm saying? Before I can tell your stepfather. And I was just like, well, first and foremost, my elders need to give me something to respect. Oh, let me tell you, because I had said respect is earned, it's not given just because you're an age. And I was like, you can be wrong. And you know what I'm saying? And respectfully, you're wrong. But please don't, I mean, like, I'm not going to sit up here and do what you're doing to prove a point. You set up here and now, and you know what I'm saying? And you know what? That's always the go to whenever it's the thing. That's what I'm saying. This is like the no resolve thing. And then our kids follow that same behavior pattern. You know what I'm saying? It was like, oh, well, you know what? Respect your elders because that's what you're supposed to do, even if they're wrong. I was just like, you know what? I was just like, I can respect them, but I can also tell them that they're wrong. You're
That's
wrong.
right.
I can
And
respect. I don't have to
it's
agree.
okay to say
There you go.
exactly. Respect definitely
That's
don't come for
right.
free. It definitely don't come for free. And you know what? And the thing about it is you don't get a pass just because you're older. No,
Facts.
we all need correction. If we all didn't need correction, guess what? None of us would be here. Real talk. Everybody's made mistakes.
That's right.
so
Yes, sir.
therefore, some of us are self-correcting. Some of us are still acting in self and still doing the same things because the behavioral pattern.
I saw, I saw, whatchamacallit, I saw a TikTok preacher. I'm not sure where his church is. He pops up on my timeline a lot. But he was sitting there and he was talking about how LeBron and Sabrina and everybody else, the best people in their field, go out and get a coach so they can get some correction. Because the
Yep.
only way to get better is to receive the correction to make things better. But if you have too much pride and too much ego, you'll never get there. But before we get moving, I gotta let me pull this big red handbrake on this thing right quick because time is rolling as it always does. Before I pull the handbrake too hard, I would like to just really quickly give a shout out to Spike Lee for making X, the American History Story, the Malcolm X story. That is the movie that turned me on to Malcolm X. That is the movie that
Mm-hmm.
made me go
Mm-hmm.
and find some books on this
Yep. It opened up.
education.
Yep.
If you are watching this and you have not seen Spike Lee's version of Malcolm X's biography, I encourage you to watch it. Is a young Denzel Washington. It's a little long, but I promise you, once the plot gets going, you are not going to realize how long it is. It is probably one of the first movies to ever make me cry. Real quick, I gotta give a shout out to my man Andre for having this super dope hoodie on. Cause don't think I missed the Dragon Ball Z. I see you over there with
Oh, that is
Goku and
definitely dope.
Vegeta's.
That is
My son.
definitely dope.
My
I
son.
see you over there with the
Yeah.
dopeness. You know what I mean, my man? Mr. James down the bottom got the Under Armour. We got a little
Under
name
Armour.
brand day
Yes,
happening
sir.
Right.
here in the
We must
Lions
protect the
Den, but
house.
I ain't got no beef. But really quickly before we go, I did want to tell everyone that on March 18th, the Lioness Den is hosting a financial awareness workshop, and it's going to be held on Zoom. So I'm looking for everyone who can go ahead and check out that financial awareness workshop. We all can handle our finances just a little bit better. And if you already know these tricks, reviewing them has never hurt anybody. But before we
Never.
go, just take a couple minutes. Gentlemen, is there anywhere that the people can find you? Anything that you're going to be working in? You got anything you want to put out there? Plug your stuff right now. Andre, let's start with you. Plug your stuff. You doing anything? What you want to tell the
Uh,
people about?
Presently, I'm trying to finish up another devotional. Hopefully, have it done next month. But you can catch me on Sundays at the Connect Church, 1918 North Collington Avenue, in the city of East Baltimore. And thank you to the visionary of Lion and Lioness Den, Lydia Chapman. Always want to honor her for her vision and just being able to empower people holistically. I'll just finish by saying this. This legacy thing, this conversation has really convicted me on multiple levels. And one of the things that I am hoping and aspiring to do is to make sure that I leave a legacy and also be known for a legacy of mental stability, mental health,
Mm-hmm.
financial financial literacy, mental health, and relationship over religion. And I know that that can start another conversation that hopefully maybe we can hit that. But that's what I want to be known for, it remembered for, and also presently participating in life for, as it relates to legacy. So thank you, Brother Alonzo and Brother James. It's always my pleasure to hang out with you
Always a
guys. I
pleasure.
hope we can do a part two of this.
Mr. James, tell the
Hey, you
people what
know
you
what?
got going on.
Hey, you know what? I'm everywhere. I'm always dropping jewels or whatever like that. As far as like our history, our knowledge, things that they want to suppress about us and everything. Um, my great grandfather actually visited the Greenwood district. My great grandfather was born in 1890. So he visited the Greenwood district as a 21, about no, actually as an 18-year-old. So he was literally the son of a slave. So
Wow.
and you know what? And I tell people that's where it's like, look, a lot of people put these pictures in black and white and everything like that to make it seem like to make it seem like it was long ago. It wasn't really that long ago. It wasn't really that long ago at all. I mean, like, look, it's like, oh, also a good, what's it called? If nobody's watched it, as far as our history and our legacy, and you know what? And we kind of need to stop thinking have anything as a history of us. It's not a history of us. It's the history of the ops. Also, so you know what? So, Dreamland, the film that was done by Maverick Carter and LeBron. If I mean, like, if you want to know anything about the Greenwood District, that and they found surviving members to actually account for a lot of these things. So also, if anybody really want to know anything more about Malcolm beyond the movie, The Ballad of the Bullet, that's also a great one. I'm gonna tell you what. Look, when we really start to learn that it was fear that really prohibited us from moving forward and started learning about things, that it was like, wait a minute, hold up. This really isn't a thing about being afraid. This is about us being actually in tune with who we are. This is our legacy. We wasn't always built this way. We were built this way. So therefore,
James, you
everybody's
pulling us
like,
back in this thing, man.
hey, I'm just
James, you
saying,
you
I'm just
you
saying,
didn't hit me pull the
study,
break.
study to show thyself approved. I'm looking like, hey, you know what? You can catch me on TikTok. I'm on TikTok too. Funny guy Jay. And also, I'm still Jay the Great. You know what? I drop some funnies, but then I drop some knowledge right along with it. It is what it is.
Absolutely. I love you fellas. I love you fellas.
Hey,
Hey,
always love.
I'm around.
Likewise.
By all means, come see me any Sunday. Christ Redeemed Ministries. I'm over on Edmondson Avenue, right next to the medical center. But
Yep.
with all that being said, there's nothing left to be said. We want to send much love to HDK Productions and my sister, the very fine Miss Lydia Chapman.
Right.
We want to give you all very much so all the love that we can.
All the
Please
love.
share this Black history. Talk to your children. Don't just talk about the big names. There are more Black history heroes
Yes.
than Malcolm and
Yes.
Martin. Talk about them.
Yes.
We'll see y'all later.
Yes.
Good night.
Yes. Night.